Welcome to another episode of AUDL Weekly. This is the show dedicated to ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more. I'm Evan Lepler. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for this final episode of the month of March, which means we are truly in the neighborhood of opening day. Now less than a month away from April 29th, Friday night launch to the brand new 2022 AUDL season. But first, we had a great show for you this evening. Coming up, a chat with the head coach of last year's Canada Cup champs, John Hayduck of the Montreal Royal, chimes in with his thoughts on rejoining the main AUDL competition this season. Also tonight, a Canadian flavor to the show with Matt Smith's Upline Out of Bounds, Ottawa's Jermey Hill, the featured player, jumping into the Upline hot seat. And of course, Adam and Daniel are also back to break down all the latest news and notes in the AUDL in toss-up. But first, we actually saw the AUDL preseason get underway this past Saturday night. The toss dives into the debut of the Portland Nitro. That's coming up here on AUDL Weekly on AUDL.tv, so stick around. All right, welcome back. This past Saturday night at beautiful and historic Providence Park in Portland, Oregon, the Oakland Spiders and Portland Nitro competed for 48 minutes of intense, interesting, and entertaining ultimate. It was just a preseason game and both teams were missing key contributors, but it still felt mighty compelling as I watched from afar. Definitely found it more riveting than the Houston-Villanova college basketball game that was transpiring simultaneously in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So if you missed it, the expansion Nitro, led by as many as 5, took a 16-11 lead early in the third quarter. But then the Spiders stormed back, an 11-5 run that surged Oakland ahead 22-21 midway through the fourth. They went back and forth in the closing minutes, ultimately finishing regulation tied at 24. And with a Western Ultimate League game scheduled at the same stadium as the main event of the doubleheader later on that evening, they understandably called it a tie, which frankly I think was totally fine. No one loves overtime more than me, but you don't need it in a preseason exhibition game. So they played 48 minutes, there were 48 goals. Both teams were able to learn a lot of lessons from the experience, and that's really the main point of a preseason game. And even without a winner, it was fascinating to watch Portland compete for the first time in the AUDL. Oakland also represented itself well. Spiders have plenty of new faces on their roster too, and they played pretty good. Obviously, huge games for Leandro Marks for the Nitro, and Keenan Lawrence stepping up for the Spiders, and you never want to put too much stock into any preseason action or numbers. I do think it's fair to project that assuming those two stay healthy, Marks and Lawrence should put up some really huge numbers this season for their respective teams. And then there's the Portland Nitro game day experience, which again, just a preseason game. But overall, it looked like it has the potential to be pretty special. Providence Park has been the home of the Portland Timbers since the franchise joined Major League Soccer in 2011. Timbers have sold out every single home game since joining the MLS. And it may be overly ambitious to hope for similar support for the Nitro, but Portland fans, notably super loyal, dedicated, and we can hope that the Nitro will capture the imaginations of the local fans as well to create a pretty cool atmosphere for their inaugural season. We still have home openers in the regular season for the Nitro and 2 other West Division expansion teams, the Colorado Summit and the Salt Lake Shred, that I can't wait to get a glimpse of in the future. Alrighty, when we come back, the Montreal Royal also have cultivated an incredible fan base, and after winning the Canada Cup last summer, they are determined to make a splash back in the AUDL's East Division in 2022. Royal head coach John Hayduck joins the show next as AUDL Weekly continues right after this. Welcome back to AUDL Weekly. Last week we had the chance to chat with Mike Denardis, head coach of the 2021 AUDL champion Carolina Flyers. So I thought it would be appropriate to give equal time to the other title-winning head coach from last year, the leader of the Montreal Royal. Coach John Hayduck is here. John, thanks so much for the time. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty well.
It's great to have you. Before we get to your Canada Cup success and looking ahead to the upcoming season, wanted to give you a chance to share the story of your move from Vancouver to Montreal, which I understand was prompted in large part by wanting to coach the Royal. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I had some experiences with a bunch of the players from the Quebec province on the under 24 Team Canada, and Quebec itself has always been a hotbed of talent and a giant mystery to me. So it just seemed like a really good challenge, and my life sort of was pointing that direction, to take that leap. So I packed everything up and moved out here to see what kind of impact I could have on the community here.
From a lifestyle standpoint, what's the biggest difference living in Western Canada versus Eastern Canada?
I mean, other than COVID?
Sure.
I moved out 10 days before COVID, so it's
right.
No, the weather's the big one, obviously. In Vancouver, you don't get past -3. Snow lasts a day or two. But the people have been super friendly. The food is amazing. Like I really enjoyed my time here, and started to make a home here. So it's been great.
It's wild that it was a week and a half before COVID hit. You moved to Montreal, and goodness, it's been a long time since then. But now you are getting ready to play a new season. Thinking back to last year, how did you see your team grow over the course of the Canada Cup, and how did that experience winning last year and experiencing success against Toronto and Ottawa, how does that prepare you for the difficult road ahead?
It doesn't. We were coming into last year, everyone was coming off of COVID. It was various stages of training, conditioning, and our focus was really just year one. It was reminding players why they love this game and getting things back on the same page and just providing a really good experience. It's a long-term project, and any success that we had on the field was less relevant than our growth as a program and as a team and as players. So I really feel like the success we had on the field was a nice extra. If anything, it actually provides us with some extra challenges this year. We did the work last year and we executed well and we had the right mindset. And I think it's going to be imperative to look past the successes of last year, to make sure that we keep focusing on taking that next step forward and our own behavior. I think our success last year is our biggest trap.
Interesting. I know you have a lot of young players. Like half your team is 23 or younger, but they're talented players and they're guys that made you want to move across the country to coach them. Who are some of the names that you are most excited to see flourish as they rejoin the main AUDL competition this season?
There's a whole host. I actually genuinely do. I am very excited about all of our players. Like the reason why they're on the team is because they have that passion and potential. Some of the obvious ones are the two players that have made the World Games, and Christophe and Malik. But the younger talent, Jacob Brissett, he really came into his own last year, and I think is still in the process of discovering what kind of player he can be. And so I think he's just started to put his stamp on this team and on the league, and I'm excited for him to take that next level. We got a couple rookies coming back in, Phil Bisson and Julien Burnett. Julien's out of Sherbrooke. Phil's a returning rookie, so but they're both very dynamic, explosive players, and I think they're going to make a name for themselves.
Sounds like you got a pretty good crew. I want to ask you about Jacob, who really had impressive numbers last year, and I think he's just 20, maybe turning 21 during the season. What has stood out to you most about him as a player and his potential, and how would you describe him as a player?
He is incredibly dynamic. He will throw left, right, flick backhand. His creativity with the disc, I think, is one of the more remarkable things. Only surpassed by his focus and mental toughness. We gave him the mantle of an O-line handler, just driving our offense all last year. And as a kid playing with all of that talent and against all of these other opponents, he had absolutely zero issues handling that pressure. He was always composed. He was always ready to play. To have that sort of maturity and focus and drive at that age, it bodes pretty well.
Sounds pretty cool. Look forward to seeing him compete against everybody else. The French connection, bringing in players from France, whether it's Quentin Bonneau or Steve Bonneau, or more recently Sasha Poit-Sokolski. Understand a couple of those guys are expected to play for you this year, but between travel and COVID and World Games, it's uncertain. What is your expectation of what level of contributions you can get from your dynamic French imports this year?
Steve's actually coaching a mixed team at club this year, so he won't be. He's had some injury issues, and so he won't be joining us. I do believe in player growth, and our priority is actually to develop these players. And so, we have fully supported Sasha's and Quentin's endeavors with Team France and their in playing World Games. So we're going to get as much out of them as we can in and around how we can support them with those goals. So they'll be back for a few games throughout the season in between their training camps. And anything they can give us. Last year was an interesting year. Sasha really came into his own and had an amazing year with a great nose for the end zone, and took the place of Quentin, who was around the team, and he shared his experience and his demeanor and all the lessons he's learned with the team, but he never played with us. So all that success we had was. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can be adding him to the team. We really took a different approach, a different play style because of our roster, and we had that success. So now that we've developed that foundation, again, I'm excited to see what our team looks like adding a star receiver like that back into the fold.
For sure. One other individual I wanted to ask you about was a guy who's been a constant in the AUDL literally every year since the league started, and that's Kevin Quinlan, who came to Montreal more than a half decade ago now and has become a leader of this program. And I mean, he's not an older guy, but he's been in the league with 10 years. He's 28 now. What does Kevin mean to the team from a leadership and on-field performance standpoint?
Kevin brings a really good set of throws. He's a very dynamic thrower that can drive an offense, but it is the mental side of it that I think is another strength. That on field he's incredibly calm and composed, and he says the right thing at the right time. Like in those on field moments, he's a lot of players look to him for that sort of stabilizing element that they know he's going to come through with that big play. But just his general vision for the game as well. He's known for his offensive throws and his prowess there, but he's probably one of our more dynamic defensive players as well, because he's always able to see the play develop, and he's always jumping around and getting in the way and just doing those things that causes so many problems for other teams. But that just sort of falls in line with the fact that he has such a good head for the game.
He's been around it for a long time, from the Buffalo Hunters and Rochester Dragons to now the Montreal Royal, and he's been a great player for the Royal. Two more questions for you. The first, just about rejoining the main AUDL competition. What are you most looking forward to with the challenges of New York, Boston, Philly back on Montreal's schedule?
Again, our focus is developing the players here, and I'm a firm believer that has to include competition against the U.S. teams. So whether it be high school, college, or club, or pro, we are going to get better as players and as teams by playing the U.S. programs. So last year was a great welcome back off of COVID. We had some success. We did the things that we set out to do. And now we get that next progression, that next challenge of seeing if we can bring those same sort of mindsets to those next level teams.
Good deal. And last thing I want to ask you, I remember talking to you a couple of years ago. You had moved to the east side of Canada pretty recently, and you told me that you didn't really speak French, and there are a lot of guys on the Royal that only speak French. How is your French after a couple of years living in Quebec?
Well, it's again, the team mindset is that it just needs to be a little better every day, and so I am getting a little better every day.
How do you say that in French?
I have no idea.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I don't know how to say it either. I can say it in Spanish.
That was my polite way of saying I have a long way to go, and that's certainly going to be a focus over the next year or two.
Great stuff. John Hayduck, thanks so much for the time. Really excited to see the Royale back in the main AUDL, and you guys jump into it quickly. Doubleheader week 1, home game against Boston week 2, then doubleheader, I think Philly and DC on the road in week 3, so 5 games in 3 weeks. You guys jumped into the deep end quickly. I'm sure you wouldn't want it any other way. John, thanks so much for the time, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thank you very much.
That's John Hayduck of the Montreal Royal. AUDL Weekly continues after this. AUDL Weekly rolls on with Toss Up. Pleased to welcome back Daniel Cohen and Adam Ruffner. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Daniel, I don't know where your hair has gone, but hopefully it wasn't victimized in some disaster, catastrophe. Hopefully it's okay. You can divulge any details you want if you want. Let's jump into topic number 1. Daniel, we'll start with you. We saw both have big games in Saturday's exhibition. Who is more poised for a more impactful 2022 season? Oakland's Keenan Lawrence or Portland's Leandro Marks?
It's tough. I mean, both these guys had such big performances to start the AUDL preseason. But how do you not get super hyped about Marks this year? Like, he's a name that I've been hearing for a while now. Like, I knew he was going to be one of the headliners on Portland. I hadn't seen him much. Like, he hasn't played AUDL before. But the versatility he brings to the field, and I didn't realize how much of a downfield threat he was. I thought of him as a thrower. Like, I've been told the Marks-Hayes combo is like Marks hitting Hayes deep, but he was getting downfield so well. He's so good in the air. He just seems like one of those classic all-around hybrids that really has this fearless, aggressive approach to the game. And we saw it in the preseason game, 14 scores. I think he is going to be like the key piece to this Portland team. Obviously, they were missing a couple stars too, so I'm just excited about the top-end talent on Portland. And Keenan Lawrence, obviously a great player too. I just worry a bit about the Spiders' ceiling. I think as far as Portland goes, with their star power, I think the ceiling is to be seen. We'll see what happens.
Good stuff. Adam, what you got?
I gotta go ahead and agree with him. And all due respect to Keenan Lawrence, who looked amazing and continues his ascent as like one of the better players in the West Division, if not the AUDL in general, in just his 3rd season of play. It's gotta be Marks in those goggles, man. I mean, he went for 670 yards. He had something like 28 yards per touch in the game. We've discussed off air before about how like a very good productive player on offense gets anywhere between about 11 and 15 yards per touch. 28 yards per touch is through a ceiling and then some as far as what kind of damage he can inflict with or without the disc. And as you kind of saw, it comes so easily. The scores, the playmaking, they just add up over and over again. I'm really excited to say, like Daniel says, where this Portland team ceiling is and how much they can challenge kind of the upper crust in the West.
I agree with y'all. It was a lot of fun watching Leandro Marks. The case for Lawrence might be, look, he may not have as much downfield cutting talent around him. He may be the go-to guy on every possession. And look, he plays with just an exuberance. I mean, after every good play, he's getting his teammates hyped. I mean, he's really become a leader of that Spiders team that I think we would all agree was probably a little bit better than we may have expected, and certainly look very competitive as we head toward the season, just about a month away. Topic number 2, couple signings announced this week. Which signing are you more excited about, Adam? DC locking up Delrico Johnson, or San Diego bringing Chris Mazur to SoCal?
I have a ton of respect for the throwing talents that Chris Mazur is going to provide the 2-time reigning division champions San Diego Growlers, but I've got to go with Rico. I mean, adding him to that already deep lineup that they've been announcing the return of Christian Boxley and David Cranston and Tyler Monroe and now Rico, it just feels like the Breeze have so many weapons to play with on both lineups, and it's epitomized by a player like Rico who is a true hybrid. You can slot him in on defense and he becomes an A1 cover guard alongside AJ Merriman and the aforementioned Cranston. But you put him on offense too, and he's equally dangerous with or without the disc. It's just kind of an embarrassment of riches right now at the Breeze, and I can't wait for this week 1 matchup between DC and New York. It's just going to be a fireworks display.
Well said, Daniel.
I'm gonna agree. I just think Rico is like, he's just the next guy in this string of, past returners that the Breeze are bringing back. I've talked before, either on here or on Swing Pass, Detroit is like quietly assembling the all-time Detroit all-star team. DC is kind of doing the same thing, and Rico is just the next name to come out, and it feels like DC is really on the verge of making like a big postseason push one of these years. And I feel like San Diego, while Mazur is going to be great for them and he's going to slot in as like one of their go-to handlers, because they've been at the top for a couple of years now, it feels slightly less impactful, less big than the Rico signing. I mean, like Adam said, I don't know where they're going to play him, but play him anywhere on the field and he is going to make a huge impact. I lean towards that versatility over the throwing talent of a guy like Chris Mazur, but obviously big additions for both teams.
Wearing the Breeze gear today, certainly you have an unbiased approach to this. Look, Alan Kolick is another great DC name that you didn't mention in terms of bringing the band back together. But Chris Mazur has been to championship weekend with 2 different franchises and showed in limited reps last year that he still not only has game, but he's got motor and leadership. So I think I don't disagree with what you said about Rico, but I think Mazur is, if he plays a good bit, a sneaky important figure in getting San Diego to maybe take that next step in the West.
And I'll add to that, Evan, it's a reunion for him and McDougal, who were amazing together in Los Angeles in 2018 when they made it to championship weekend. So that's
Jesse
a great
Cohen
combination.
too. Yeah.
Jesse Cohen, not mentioned enough, and talking about great cutters in the West. Topic number 3, Daniel, big picture. Over the next 5 seasons, which franchise is better positioned to win more AUDL championships in the next 5 years? New York or Carolina?
You had to pick a number like 5. You couldn't have gone 2 or 3 or like 8 to 10. 5 is like that sweet spot where it's like Carolina, yes, I think they're better set up for long-term success. I think New York has a lot of talent right now, obviously. I mean, they both do. I'm picking Carolina. I think I just lean towards the Carolina system, but this is like a very true toss-up in the sense that New York, I think, will be near the top of the league for the next 5 years, but anything beyond that, I feel like they might start to fall off a bit. So I think Carolina, just with the amount of buy-in that team has, with the amount of talent in that area, it feels a little more solidified, whereas New York sort of like juggling the star power they have, adding guys, losing guys every single year. It feels more secure to pick Carolina at this point, but would not surprise me if they tie in titles over the next 5 years. One
You would
apiece.
pick a tie. You would pick a tie.
You would. Adam, what do you think?
I'm also going to choose Carolina, but I think it differs a little for me. I think it has to do with their opponents right now. I think that I see Carolina's trajectory toward championship weekend in that 5-year window being a little bit more doable than what we were just kind of talking about with DC and New York, where DC is a very legitimate threat for this outstanding New York team that can obviously make a championship game in any given season, but I think is going to be tested a little bit more on a consistent basis by the Breeze than, say, what the Flyers might face in the South for right now, for how it seems. However, I just hope we kind of get what happened in the NBA between the Warriors and Cavaliers, where for the next 2 to 3 seasons we just get Empire versus Flyers in the championship, and it's just toe-to-toe 2 great teams. I'm not really going to be one to complain about who comes out on top.
Empire went undefeated, won the title in 2019. The Flyers got their first championship in 2021. They played in each of those regular seasons too. They are not scheduled to play in this regular season, so if the Flyers and Empire meet this year, it will be at championship weekend. Topic number 4, getting more back into the now to wrap things up. Adam, their teams play in week 1. Who's going to have a bigger 2022 season statistically? Pittsburgh's Max Shepard or Chicago's Pavel Giannis?
As much as I like Shepard's overall production, I'm going to go with Pavel for right now. I think he's going to have a big year. I think for as much as he might like to say that he isn't impressed by the statistics, I think it bothered them a little bit last year to finish 3rd in assists in the league. I think that with some of the departures from the Chicago's lineup, they're going to be using him a little bit more. And as we've talked about before on this show, he was his most efficient self in 2021 when they had the most efficient offense ever. It would almost behoove them to see if they can increase that usage a little bit and keep the same performance from Pavel. But that being said, it wouldn't surprise me none to see Max Shepard return to a 100-score season as he had in 2019.
Windy City Cohen, what do you think?
I think we're agreeing on all 4 this week. I'm taking Pavel too, and it is about those offensive losses for Chicago and the fact that we know Pavel can handle an extremely big workload as he did in the seasons where he was the AUDL assist leader. So I feel like he's just going to get right back to that top spot. Losing Pat Schreiwise, Keegan North, Nico Lake, there's a lot of touches that are now just up for grabs in the offense. Sure, Dalton Smith will take some of those, but it is going to return if you could even say they broke from a Pavel-centric offense in 2021. I just feel like he is going to be the guy. I mean, he was the 3rd highest yardage total in the entire league last season, and that was with all of these riches on offense. So take away a few of those guys, I think he just absorbs touches. I feel like another 7,000 total yard season, as weird as it sounds, feels very realistic for Pavel.
Yeah, Max Shepard could put those yards together too. They're both going to have big seasons. They're both going to be important for their teams. I am a little disappointed that neither of you worked in the term hornswoggled this week, but alas, we'll move on.
I forgot about it.
Toss-up is over. Thanks to Adam. Thanks to Daniel. You can hear them on their podcast Swing Pass, wherever you get your podcast. Gentlemen, we'll talk to you soon. Right now, more AUDL Weekly. Upline and Out of Bounds coming up.
What's up, AUDL world? Welcome to another preseason episode of AUDL Upline and Out of Bounds. I am here with a AUDL veteran, for sure, someone who I know is looking forward very much to the 2022 season, Mr. Jermey Hill from Ottawa. How's it going, Jeremy?
Good, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you on. You freezing up there, or are you holding steady for now?
It was pretty cold here, but it is getting a little warmer, which is nice to see, so we can hopefully get outside pretty soon.
All right. I am hoping for everybody's sake that you're able to get outside soon. I'm excited for the AUDL audience to get to know you a little bit, so we're going to jump right into this introduction. And first question, hometown.
Sure, yeah. So obviously, as you mentioned, I'm a Ottawa Outlaws player, born and raised here. So it means a lot for me to play here in the capital of Canada, and I plan on keeping it that way for many years going forward.
Very cool. Homegrown legend. You'll love to see it. Current age.
Current age is 26 years old. I always turn 27 in the summer. So birthday's in the July.
Cool. Yeah, heading right into that prime, so that should be great. Next question. Did you attend college, and if so, what degree did you obtain?
Yeah, so I went to Brock University in St. Catharines, Ontario, and I have a Bachelor's of Sports Management.
Very cool. Very cool. Moving on here. Position on the field.
Sure. So yeah, I started off as mainly a downfield cutter, kind of looking for those long throws to kind of get some goals. But a lot more recently, I've kind of become a hybrid, coming underneath and being more of a versatile player. So that's kind of how I describe myself now.
Very cool. Making the natural progression, I see, which you love to see. So, yeah. Moving on to ultimate origin story.
Sure. Yeah. So I originally was supposed to go to Brock University to play soccer. So having already played 1 year in high school, Ultimate, I went to school to play soccer, got injured, and then went to play Ultimate just to keep active. Ended up being really enjoying the sport and falling in love with it. 4 years down the line, stayed at Brock to continue on with that, and then returned for a fifth season after tearing my ACL in my fourth. Went off to England to play for a semester as well, and then ever since 2015, so even while at Brock, I've been playing for the Outlaws. So it's been this will be my seventh season now playing for the Outlaws.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of international experience in there, which is always cool to see. You already answered my next question, which was number of years in the AUDL. So with that in mind, 7 years, that's a long time to be in it. The last intro question here is favorite AUDL moment in all those years.
I think it came from this past season. We got our first win over Toronto, which was, for someone who's been around since the start, has been a long time coming. Came in the first game of the season and kind of set our season off on the right foot. We weren't able to continue that success for the rest of the season, but it's just a good step in the right direction, I think. So it felt really good.
Absolutely. Getting the monkey off the back. I know when Atlanta beat Dallas for that one and only time, it felt pretty good. Now that we've gotten to know Jermey a little better, we're going to jump into today's game segment, which is a classic from last year, GOATs. Greatest of all time. So the way it works is I'm going to give you a category and you tell me who, what, when, where, what you think is the greatest of all time in that category. You got any questions before we kick it off?
Nope, seems pretty straightforward.
Yep. All right. First one here, greatest of all time reality TV series.
Survivor would be my answer for that.
How many seasons deep are they now?
I believe this is like 42. It's one that I've always watched as a kid and growing up. I've applied once, so we'll see what happens maybe in future years.
Oh man, I would love to see you down the road on that. That would be amazing and hard to argue with 42 seasons of success. So
yeah,
Survivor it is. All right, next category. Greatest of all time, country song of the last 25 years.
I have to say The Cowboy and Me by Tim McGraw. Grew up listening to it, and every time I hear it, it just kind of brings me back. So.
Another classic. I'm not a big music guy. I'm not a big country music guy, but I've heard of Tim McGraw. Hard to argue that as well. So.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along here then. Greatest of all time streaming service.
I'm going to go with Spotify. I think if you're thinking music, I know it's super popular, and I think people have been able to curate their albums, kind of, what they're doing or their interests, and I think it has really shown a lot about people. If you're thinking TV, I have to go with Netflix. I think that's probably the easiest and largest and kind of offers quite the variety. So.
Yeah, you could get by for a good amount of time on just Spotify and Netflix, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, got a couple more here. Greatest of all time, dog toy.
Dog toy. I'd say
I know you got some dogs. So what's their favorites?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on if one dog has one toy and one has another, because they will fight over them. But I think the original Kong with peanut butter filled is a classic. If you can freeze that puppy and keep it going for a while, you can distract them and, move on with your life for the next hour while they keep busy. So I'd have to say that would be the GOAT of dog toys.
Agreement with you. I got a couple of dogs, some chewers myself. Shout out Kong. You ever want to sponsor the league or the show? We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Last one here, taking us home. We're going to get back to Ultimate a little bit. Greatest of all time. I know there's a lot, but greatest of all time, Canadian Ultimate player.
I think it's fairly obvious for anyone in Canada, especially anyone from Ottawa. Derek Alexander would have to be my GOAT for Canadian Ultimate players. I've personally been able to learn a lot from him, and I think I may be biased, but that'd definitely be my answer.
Very cool. I know a lot of AUDL fans would agree with you there. Derek Alexander, an absolute legend. I hope we use this as an excuse to, throw in a couple more highlights so everybody gets to see it.
Yeah.
But strong answer there. All right. Well, I appreciate you playing along, and I'm glad we got to know you a little more. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today. Before we get out of here, any last shout outs you want to give?
Just to my teammates for this season. I'm excited to get going. I know you're all working very hard. So we'll see you and the fans very soon.
Absolutely. I know I speak for a lot of the fans and a lot of the AUDL world, but I know I'm excited to watch the Outlaws take the field again in 2022. I know it's been a long 2 years up there with COVID and whatnot, but really happy to have y'all back in the swing of things, and, good luck in this brand new season. But for now, back to Evan.
All right, Matt, thanks so much. Great stuff with Jermey Hill, one of the more underrated guys in the league, and I was pumped to learn that Jermey is also a Survivor fan. I have loved that show for a very long time, too. That's going to do it for this program tonight. My thanks, as always, go out to Adam Ruffner, Daniel Cohen, John Hayduck, Matt Smith, Jermey Hill, and our editor extraordinaire, Luke Johnson. Thank you as well for tuning in tonight as we sit just 3 days away from opening night of the 2022 AUDL season. Cannot wait. For now, my name is Evan Lepler. Thanks again for checking out the show tonight, and I'll see you back right here next Wednesday.